There was a time when I was completely stuck, buried in bills, chasing solutions, and watching my hope fade day by day. But today, by God's grace, I live in overflow. I no longer live in fear of tomorrow, and I wake up knowing my needs will be met. Do you want to know the secret that turned everything around for me? Stay with me until the end, because what I'm about to share could be the same key to unlock your breakthrough. If you walk away halfway, you may never know the blessing that was meant to be yours. I'm not just telling you a nice story. I was there, in the darkness of financial struggle, asking why life felt so unfair. I know the pain of working hard and still coming up short, of wondering if prayers were just empty words. But then something shifted. I found a prayer that aligned my heart with God's promises. It wasn't about begging for money. It was about surrendering fear, planting faith, and declaring His word over my life. And when I prayed it sincerely, change came. Debts began to vanish, unexpected opportunities appeared, and peace settled in my heart like never before. And here's why I share this with you. Because I discovered that when we give, when we open our hands and our hearts, the blessings are multiplied. I believe this video itself is a seed I'm planting into your life. And the more I give away what God has shown me, the more grace flows back into both of us. And it wasn't just me. I've witnessed single parents, overwhelmed with worry, see unexpected provision arrive. I've heard business owners on the verge of collapse testify that after praying, doors opened they thought were forever shut. These aren't fairy tales. These are living testimonies. That's why I believe you're here right now. Not by accident, but by divine appointment. Friend, I say this with all sincerity. If you stay with me until the final word, you will receive something that could mark the difference between another year of frustration or a season of favor, blessing, and rest. As it is written in Psalm 20, verse 1, "May the Lord answer you in the day of trouble. May the name of the God of Jacob protect you." That promise is alive for you today. So don't just listen passively. Lean in. Let this be your sacred moment. And I want to hear from you. Share in the comments the financial burden you're believing God to lift, or the ways He has provided for you before. This is not just a video. It's a holy meeting point between you, me, and the God who supplies abundantly. Your turnaround could be only one prayer away. I remember the season when I was buried so deep in debt that every step forward felt like sinking into quicksand. Bills piled up higher than mountains, and hope seemed as distant as stars hidden behind stormy skies. Each day pressed down on me like a weight I couldn't shake off, and each night ended with a sigh so heavy it felt like my soul was cracking. Have you ever been there? Fighting battles no one else can see, smiling in the daylight while crying in the dark? I prayed with trembling words, but heaven seemed silent, and the silence was louder than thunder. I asked myself, has God forgotten me? Does He still see me? Those nights stretched long, like corridors with no doors, only shadows whispering doubt. My heart grew weary, and fear became a constant companion. I felt like a traveler lost in a desert, thirsty for hope, yet finding only sand slipping through my fingers. But friend, let me ask you, have you ever felt like your prayers were hitting a wall, as if your tears were invisible, even to God? I know that ache. And yet, even in that desolate season, a quiet whisper reminded me that God was not absent, even if I couldn't see His hand. Scripture declares in Psalm 56, verse 8, "You have kept count of my tossings, put my tears in your bottle. those words became my lifeline. If every tear mattered to him, then maybe, just maybe, my breakthrough was closer than I thought. Looking back, I now see that my cries were not wasted. They were seeds planted in the soil of faith. Though I couldn't see it then, God was working behind the scenes, arranging moments of provision and preparing blessings beyond my imagination. The darkness, though suffocating, became the place where my roots of faith grew deeper. Isn't it true that the night sky reveals the stars most brightly when the world is at its darkest? My pain became the canvas where God would later paint His glory. So if you're listening and feel like giving up, take heart. Your struggles are not signs of abandonment. They are stepping stones towards something greater. Ask yourself, what if the tears you shed today are watering the very harvest you'll rejoice in tomorrow? The lesson I carried from that season is this: God does not waste pain. Every sigh, restless night, and unanswered prayer is gathered by Him, and in His perfect timing, He transforms despair into testimony. Hold on, because the same God who counted my tears is counting yours, and He is faithful to turn mourning into dancing and scarcity into abundance. After months of despair, a quiet evening became a turning point I will never forget. I picked up my Bible, seeking comfort, not expecting much. But that night, something extraordinary happened. My eyes landed on a passage that seemed to speak directly to me. Jeremiah 1, verse 5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. At that instant, something inside me shifted. Tears welled up as a wave of realization swept over me. God had never left my side. I had walked through darkness, feared abandonment, and doubted His presence, yet there He was, patiently waiting for me to notice Him. The words felt like a lamp cutting through a pitch-black night, illuminating the path I had been fumbling along blindly. I began to feel hope stir in my heart. Blessings I thought were lost were still waiting ahead. Have you ever encountered a moment where a single sentence feels written just for you? That night, I understood that I was known, I was chosen, and I was never abandoned. I realized that even in my most hopeless moments, God's attention was never far, and His timing is perfect even when I cannot see it. From that moment, I realized my relationship with God needed to change. I could no longer try to carry every burden alone. Each worry, unpaid bill, and anxious thought pressed on me, and I understood that surrendering them to God was the only way to find relief. I started speaking to Him as if to a trusted friend, honestly sharing my fears, regrets, and frustrations. One day, I whispered, "Lord, I cannot do this on my own. Please carry it for me." And a peace settled in my spirit that I hadn't felt in years. Psalm 46, verse 1 came alive. God is our refuge and strength. I began to grasp what it truly meant to rest in His strength rather than mine, to trust that even the burdens I thought too heavy for Him were already under His care. The shift wasn't instant, but it was steady. With every prayer, small miracles appeared. Calls from friends, guidance at work, doors opening I thought sealed. These weren't coincidences. They were God rewriting my story. I started journaling these moments, each act of provision, a reminder that His faithfulness works quietly until manifestation arrives. I began asking myself, how many blessings have I overlooked because I expected them to arrive in loud, unmistakable ways? Even the smallest answered prayer reminded me that God's care is detailed, attentive, and deeply personal. Learning to release control also taught me to listen. I noticed subtle nudges in my intuition, choices that seemed small but led to enormous results. Prayer became more than asking. It was conversing, aligning, and releasing. I began affirming daily, I am known, I am chosen, and I am never abandoned. These words anchored me in stormy thoughts, reminding me that God had already counted my tears and charted my path. I realized that my faith was like a seed, and every act of trust watered it, preparing for the harvest I could not yet see. Over time, my finances began to turn. Opportunities arose unexpectedly. I received help from sources I hadn't anticipated, and doors that seemed permanently closed swung open. The change wasn't always dramatic. Sometimes a small bill paid off, or a timely project. But collectively, these moments created momentum. I realized surrender works hand in hand with action. I still made plans and worked hard, but now my steps were guided by prayer, discernment, and awareness that I was not alone. Have you felt the relief of releasing something heavy, knowing someone else can handle it better? That is what entrusting my life to God felt like, and the results rippled into every part of my existence. I also discovered joy in sharing what I learned, encouraging friends, family, or strangers to lean on God revealed the same peace and provision in their lives. God doesn't just bless us for ourselves. He uses our testimony to ignite faith in others. The lesson became clear. Giving is receiving, and sharing our journey plants seeds that grow into miracles around us. I noticed that even simple acts, praying for someone, offering encouragement, or sharing my story, could spark hope and transformation in ways I never imagined. So, if you are struggling today, know this. Your burdens are not permanent, and your tears are not unnoticed. Open your heart to God, speak to Him sincerely, and entrust Him with what feels impossible. Begin with a simple prayer. Speak affirmations that root you in His promises, and watch small steps of faith transform your reality. Your breakthrough may be waiting just beyond your next sincere prayer or act of faith. The lesson is this: when you encounter God and truly release your burdens, every area of life, financial, emotional, spiritual, can begin to shift. Believe it, receive it, and allow God's faithfulness to carry you into the abundance He has already prepared. And know that every challenge you face is part of a divine plan to strengthen, teach, and position you for greater things than you can imagine. As the days unfolded, I began to notice subtle shifts in my life, even before any money appeared in my account. It started with a quiet sense of peace that replaced the anxiety I had carried for years. Each morning, I woke with a lightness I hadn't felt in a long time, a sense that God's hand was moving in ways I could not yet fully see. Small opportunities appeared. A conversation with a friend led to advice that changed my approach to finances. A new task at work opened doors for growth. A timely suggestion from a mentor helped me organize my budget more effectively. These were not grand miracles at first, but each one was a seed, proof that the Spirit was guiding me step by step. I began to understand that faith is like planting in unseen soil. You may not see the harvest immediately, but growth is happening beneath the surface. With each passing day, I whispered over myself an affirmation that became a mantra for this new season. I am stepping into a new season, God's season of abundance. Psalm 23, verse 2, came alive in me. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. I realize that God's provision often starts with inner peace, the calm confidence that He is orchestrating every detail in my favor, even when I cannot yet see the outcome. Then, tangible changes began to appear. A new job opportunity came into my life, one I had never imagined for myself. The income was better, the work fulfilling, and the schedule allowed me to manage my life more effectively. At the same time, debts I had been struggling with slowly began to resolve, some through careful budgeting, others through unexpected payments or support from people who were inspired to help me. Each moment of provision felt like a gentle confirmation that my prayers were heard. I remember praying with my whole heart, "Father, please open the windows of heaven and pour abundance into my life." And in those moments, I felt the peace of Psalm 23, verse 1 settle in me. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." Provision is not simply about money. It is about God aligning circumstances, opportunities, and relationships so that we can thrive. I started noticing that even ordinary days carried hints of God's favor. Conversations that inspired ideas, moments of clarity, and unexpected encouragement. Small signals that something greater was unfolding. One of the most striking lessons during this season was learning to recognize the source of every blessing. Opportunities arrived from unexpected places. An old friend reaching out with a suggestion, a chance meeting that led to a new client, even small wins that seemed insignificant at first added up into real change. I realized that abundance is often cumulative. God's favor shows itself in ways that can be easy to overlook unless we cultivate awareness and gratitude. I started keeping a journal of these small blessings, recording every moment of guidance, every coincidence that felt like divine timing. Reflecting on these moments strengthened my faith and made me more attentive to God's ongoing work in my life. It also reminded me that prayer is a conversation, not a one-time request, and that listening is just as important as speaking. As confidence grew, I became bolder in aligning my actions with the vision I held in prayer. I invested in myself by learning new skills, approached work projects with creativity and initiative, and reached out to people I had previously hesitated to connect with. Each action, inspired by prayer and faith, created a ripple effect. Doors opened where there had seemed only walls, and relationships I had thought were dead ends began to bear fruit. The deeper I trusted God, the more I noticed that my role was not to manufacture outcomes, but to position myself faithfully in the space where His blessings could flow. Knowing that He was guiding every step. Throughout this journey, I also encountered moments of testing. Some challenges seemed larger than before, and old doubts tried to creep back in. But I learned to see these moments not as setbacks, but as opportunities to reaffirm faith. I reminded myself daily, I am guided, I am protected, and I am walking in God's abundance. Each repetition strengthened my resolve and allowed me to see the broader picture. Eventually, the accumulation of small, faithful choices and constant prayer brought tangible change. Opportunities appeared unexpectedly, debts began to resolve, relationships healed, and peace became a natural part of life. I began to understand that abundance is not just about receiving, but about participating in God's work with an open heart and willingness to act when prompted. The lessons I carry from this season are clear. You are never alone. Even when the night feels endless, your struggles are never wasted because God is attentive to every tear. And faith, coupled with surrender and action, sets the stage for breakthroughs. Take a moment now and reflect. Where might God be preparing your path in unseen ways? How can you release fear, step in faith, and recognize the subtle blessings that are already surrounding you. By leaning into this divine partnership, you too can experience transformation that brings peace, provision, and purpose into every corner of your life, allowing God's abundant plan to unfold fully before you. As I walked further into this new season, I realized that true blessings were far more than money or material provision. Money meets needs, yes, but peace, joy, and purpose are the roots of every genuine blessing. I began noticing changes in ways I had never anticipated. My health improved, my energy returned, and I found a sense of contentment that no paycheck alone could provide. Relationships that had been distant or strained began to mend, and new, uplifting connections entered my life. I could feel a transformation happening deep within me, a renewal that touched both my spirit and my outlook on life. And the most beautiful part was discovering that these blessings were not meant solely for me. They were meant to be shared. I could now help others, extend support, and make a tangible difference using the gifts I had received. I affirmed each day, I am blessed to be a blessing to many, remembering Matthew 10 verse 8, you have received freely, give freely. Living in this season of sowing and reaping has taught me that the cycle of generosity and provision is continuous. Sharing my story, praying for others, offering encouragement, and extending tangible help opened doors I could never have imagined. Each act of giving returned to me multiplied, sometimes in surprising ways. A small prayer for a friend would come back as guidance in my own life. A donation or act of kindness created ripples that brought unexpected opportunities. I learned that God intends for His blessings to flow through us, making us channels of goodness and provision. The more I trusted Him, the more consistent the flow of blessing became, not as a transaction, but as a natural result of obedience, faith, and love. Prayer became the heartbeat of this season. Each morning, I would ask, please use my life to sow seeds of blessing for many. And in the quiet moments, I could sense guidance, inspiration, and opportunities that aligned perfectly with this prayer. I witnessed repeatedly how 2 Corinthians 9, verse 6 came to life. Whoever sows generously will also reap generously. It was not always about money. Sometimes the returns were spiritual insights, timely advice or encouragement at exactly the right moment. Sometimes they were literal blessings, but always the impact extended beyond me. I saw how generosity, humility, and faith create a fertile environment where God's work can flourish. Each act of giving, no matter how small, is a seed planted, and God ensures that it will grow and multiply in ways that benefit many. Another realization that deepened my gratitude was the interconnectedness of blessings. I began seeing that personal breakthroughs are rarely isolated events. They are linked to the people, opportunities, and actions around us. When I supported others, helped them overcome challenges, or simply shared wisdom, I noticed that the energy I put out returned to me in unexpected forms. Provision, protection, and peace often arrived in ways that could not have been planned or predicted. I began journaling these moments, noting each instance of multiplication and the unexpected ways God worked through me to reach others. The awareness that I was part of a larger plan encouraged me to remain faithful, patient, and attentive to the opportunities He placed before me. Consistency and faith became essential. Trusting God, giving generously, and living with an open heart is not a one-time effort. It is a daily commitment. I started setting intentional habits, daily prayers for provision, affirmations of abundance, acts of kindness, and regular reflection on the ways God had moved in my life. This consistency became a rhythm that sustained my spirit, strengthened my faith, and expanded my capacity to bless others. I realized that abundance is not simply about accumulation. It is about alignment with God's will, active engagement in His work, and the courage to trust in His timing. Especially, I discovered that living in a season of sowing and reaping is about partnership with God. Every blessing carries a purpose beyond personal gain. Provision comes with responsibility, and the true measure of wealth is the impact we have on others. The more I gave, the more I understood that God's generosity is limitless, flowing through me to touch lives in ways I cannot fully comprehend. If you are listening now, reflect. How can you become a channel of blessing today? Which seeds can you plant in prayer, action, or generosity that will grow into miracles for someone else? The lessons are clear. Blessings are multiplied through giving. Faith produces tangible change, and trusting God's guidance transforms every area of life. Speak your affirmations daily. Nurture your faith. Pray earnestly and act generously. Let your life be a testimony that God's blessings are abundant, powerful, and meant to be shared. In doing so, you step fully into a life of purpose, fulfillment, and joy. Embodying the truth that when we live to bless others, we cannot help but be blessed in return. Looking back, I see clearly how God has transformed my life from a place of darkness, worry, and uncertainty into a life filled with light, peace, and provision. Every challenge, every moment of fear, and every unanswered prayer served a purpose, guiding me closer to Him and teaching me to trust His timing. And I believe with all my heart that He can do the same for you. This moment you are experiencing right now is not an accident. You are hearing this because God wants to pour His blessings into your life. He wants to lift you from struggle into a season of abundance, to replace doubt with faith and fear with courage. Open your heart fully, with trust and sincerity, and pray without reservation, and you will begin to witness provision in ways you may never have imagined. This is your invitation to step into a new beginning. Allow yourself to receive with humility and gratitude, knowing that God's grace is limitless and personal. Affirm aloud each day, I open my heart to receive a season of abundant blessings. Let these words sink into your spirit and remind you that every prayer you lift, every act of faith, and every decision aligned with God's guidance sets the stage for miracles. Remember the promise in Jeremiah 29, verse 11. For I know the plans I have for you, plans for your welfare and not for harm. These are not just words on a page. They are God speaking directly to you, assuring you that your life has purpose, your efforts are noticed, and your future is bright. I encourage you now to reflect. What areas of your life are you ready to surrender to God's care? What steps of faith are you willing to take today, knowing that He is already ahead of you, preparing opportunities, provision, and favor? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story may inspire someone else to trust and receive. And if this message resonates with you, consider subscribing to our channel, Faith and Favor, so you can continue to receive encouragement, guidance, and testimonies of God's abundant provision. As you move forward, remember that God's blessings often begin in small, subtle ways before they grow into the extraordinary. Stay attentive, stay faithful, and remain generous in heart, For the seeds you plant today, whether through prayer, kindness, or obedience, will blossom into the abundant harvest He has prepared. Step boldly into this new season and trust that every aspect of your life, financial, emotional, spiritual, can be renewed. God's promise is active, alive, and waiting for you to embrace it. Accept it with an open heart and let His favor carry you to heights beyond what you have dared to hope for.